Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about the power of perspective, and joining us to contribute to the conversation is Robin Osborn. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Janice. So delighted to be here.
Can you share with our audience a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Well, I started my entrepreneurial journey at the age of 21. Unfortunately, I lost my father suddenly, and I became a business owner in one day alongside my twin brother and my sister, and we had 40 employees.
Wow.
So for me, it was really a school of hard knocks and stepping into leadership role at a young age. Took a lot of time, and there was a lot of learning experiences. What I found about 25 years in to running the company is we got stuck, and we were what I call flying blind. We actually are a aircraft, an FAA repair station. And what I did was implement a operating system in our company, and we ended up doubling our revenue in 24 months. And I took that knowledge from the 30 years of leading and managing employees and became a consultant and a coach. So I've been doing that for the last 8 years. And my background, I would say, in as far as power of perspective, I had a life-changing experience in September 2021. I was diagnosed with a baseball-sized brain tumor, luckily benign, and I had emergency surgery. They didn't know if I was going to make it, and by the grace of God, I am here. So my coaching and my consulting has deepened in the definite power of perspective. A lot changed for me. The tools that I used and continue to use in companies anywhere from 2 million to 200 million, I used in my own recovery process. Wow. And I'm very excited to say that I'm going to make 100% recovery, but it's a very powerful journey in tenacity and consistent execution.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the things you talk about is stop firefighting and become a smoke detector, and it reminds me of I've seen them. People say poor planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part, and kind of that sort of thing. So talk to me a little bit about the firefighting we often see in organizations where everything's an emergency and everything has to be done ASAP, and then how to get ahead of that.
Absolutely. My experience in a lot of companies is they are addicted to chaos. So we are in the habit or behavior of we can't change what we tolerate, we're allowing it. Everything is important, and we need to prioritize and focus on what is the biggest priorities. What I see a lot of executives doing is doing the $20-$25 an hour tasks that they could be delegating. They're really lacking time, so capacity of time. And then when a urgent fire hits, and they're all classified as fires, is they're not compartmentalizing time and making decisions for the greater good of the company. And what I find in delegating, really coaching and enlightening executives in how to delegate, creates time. And time, when we're making decisions reactively, it's impacting our bottom line because we don't always make the right decision, And the other thing I would say is the lack of decision making is also part of the reason why there are so many fires. We're not actually solving issues and getting to the root of a problem. What I have really discovered in my 8 years of consulting is 90% of your problems are going to be people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of I don't know about you, but I've found that it seems like people even maybe create problems that don't actually, they imply that there is an emergency when maybe there isn't an emergency, but they just, because it maybe was their boss's boss says, hey, I need this done. They kind of just assume that it must be an emergency. Is that something you see? And what's your recommendation there?
My recommendation is I utilize DISC
Mm,
for the team to understand, first and foremost, communication styles. Also, each leader does things at a different pace, and some, depending on what the behavior is, may not be comfortable being open, honest, and transparent and actually taking responsibility and saying, I'm not going to be able to get that done by Wednesday.
mm,
I also find that they're handing things off and we're not being specific
yep.
on what the details, the expectations are, and if they can truly get it to done by when the expectation is. The disc is very, very powerful in creating cohesiveness and better understanding of each leader. So there's 4 different behavior styles, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. The D communicates in a much more get results now. They're not really concerned about emotion, or they just want to get it done and they want to get it done effectively and immediately. The I, it stands for interactive, is more wears their feelings on their sleeve and wants to be liked so they can get their feelings hurt in conversations if a D is too direct or demanding. An S stands for stabilizing, tends to want to stick to traditional ways. They want time to think about stuff. So they are much more slower paced. And a C, which stands for cautious, is more high detail oriented, quality oriented, and they want time to make sure that it's right and they have the detail they need, they have the data. So this all plays out in conversations and in communication styles.
Mm. Yeah. I think one of the things that can really help, I guess, in those firefighting or, crisis situations, I find, and you were leading to it as well, is kind of asking the right questions, like, how impactful is this? And, where's the urgency coming from? And when does it actually become a crisis? I mean, do you have questions, kind of those clarifying questions that help combat, this perceived, crisis or perceived fire?
I would say that I focus on what is the outcome first
Mm,
instead of getting lost in the chaos, because an issue can have 7 different spinning plates inside of it, but what are we solving?
mm,
What is the actual identifying what that is? Sometimes we need to give it time, and listening is so important rather than just assuming we know what it is. And that's where my learning came in my own business, is that my ego assumed that I knew the answer because I've ran the company for 30 years. So the power in perspective is really seeking to understand and then making a decision while you're training instead of being the answer man, everyone around you to ask open-ended questions of how and what would it look like? How would we do that? That's where really delegating and elevating people to the right seat impacted the growth that we had in our business and what I've seen in my clients as well. The stuck is when we're pushing it on them and they are not clear on first and foremost what it is that they need to be doing. And a lot of times we're not solving. So what I call the crazy eight is when we have the same issue recircling over and over and over. We haven't gotten to the real root of what's there.
Yeah, I think, there's a quote, and I think it's misattributed to Einstein. I don't know that he actually said it, but it was like, if I were given an hour to save the planet, would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute solving it. Like, it's about getting, it's about getting to the right question though, right? Like what really is the problem? And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. And so how do you, I mean, you mentioned a few of the questions that you might ask, but do you have other techniques around getting to the root cause of the issues we face?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to say is I believe there's a lot of ineffective meetings going on.
Mm.
So driving a meeting that is really disciplined with an agenda that is timed, we have clear understanding of exactly what it is that we're going through on that agenda, and then we're loading issues so that we don't get distracted. We're not beating a horse. In that, the bottom line is we've got to solve and we've got to make decisions. How I would do that, one that I have used over the last 30 years is 5 why, asking why 5 times. Again, what I think is interesting is something might appear to be process issue when it's actually people issue, or vice versa. So we can't assume or interpret things. We really need to get curious. Getting curious is a lot of revenue in the bank, because instead of staying in the crazy eight of not getting to the root of it, we know we have people issues and we know we have process issues, but again, we're tolerating it, we're allowing it. A lot of times the small issue is a much greater issue. It magnifies itself. And the other thing is, I find that people are not addressing, they're not having the difficult conversations. We're staying in resistance to
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
just in getting curious.
And why do you think people avoid having those conversations?
Well, honestly, I think we're come from fear from an HR perspective. I think that, we all play a role. We have roles that we are accountable and responsible for executing on. And when we're not showing up, to me, everything comes down to values. If you're not showing up and stepping up in alignment with the values, then we need to have a conversation. And it's within 24 hours, not 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks. You're going to have a lot less impact on changing the behavior if we continue to let it go. So I think there's sensitivity, or the HR can get sticky. I think core values, we hire on skill set and fire on culture. If they're not showing up and I'm going to use myself as an example in my own business. When I was frustrated and showing up late, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a 35-mile drive, but I would stand with my arms on my hips
Mhm.
and wondered why the company wasn't being as successful as I knew it could be. I looked in the mirror and I realized I wasn't in alignment with the values. I wasn't leading by example.
Mm.
So I like to start with the leadership team at the high level and really have open, honest, transparent conversations in changing the behavior, and then we drive it throughout the organization.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's bad parenting, essentially.
Right. Um,
Yeah.
well, and so, you kind of mentioned it about, we can't change things when we tolerate behaviors, that maybe aren't the healthiest for our organization. So how do you turn that around? I mean, especially how do you turn it around without becoming maybe sounding like you're just micromanaging or nitpicking or, always focus on the negative or something like that?
I would say it starts with you as a executive, and I'll give you a couple examples of myself. And I'm going to use a personal story here, but it isn't nitpicking in the way that we hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize on the values. So culture is so pivotal in motivation and empowerment, and where we all agree that these are our values of our company and this is what they look like to align and execute and show up in them. And I've had employees, our average retention rate was over 28 years. I had 3 employees that hit 40 years in our company.
Wow.
So you need to care about your people, and we also need to not nitpick, but let them in on what they're doing amazing. Because if someone's not showing up in alignment with do what you say, but they're crushing it in being humbly confident, or whatever your value
Mhm.
is that we need to let them in on it. Hey, way to go. I want to give you a high five in how you're showing up, but here's where I need you to raise the bar because you are continuing to, and we need to see you improve. What do you think about that? So again, I would ask open-ended questions to let them understand where they're coming from. Um, for example, in my own personal journey, so it took me 1 year to walk 1 mile
Mm.
in my recovery.
Mhm.
And personally, I operate in the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 values. So one of them is be impeccable with your word. So I had 6 hours a week of physical therapy, chiropractic, personal training, and the therapy was really rough. And one day I didn't want to go because it was just something that was really challenging.
Yeah.
And I really walk the talk in what I coach and consult in. And I had a serious conversation with myself and realized, nope, I'm committed to going and I'm not going to get the growth and the outcome for my recovery. And I went anyway, and I had a huge breakthrough that day. And what I find with companies is the more that we are open to being the change first and foremost with ourselves, not pointing the finger, but really working on yourself as a leader in your personal life as well as your professional, and stepping into it. And
Yeah.
then visiting at the end of the day, how did I show up? What could I have done better? Was my tone, could it have been more people first, if that's the value? So I find that, you know, the culture is what is going to create your retention and your long-term success of your business is with, you know, happy people that are aligned in the values.
Hmm. You mentioned a couple of times that that it was really important to, or that people, we tend to hire on skill sets and not on culture. And so I'm just curious then, do you, what's your advice then on maybe like, switching that, or, getting culture in part of the hiring process?
I recommend using a company called Wise Hire, and they base the recruiting off the disc. So
Mm.
when we say skill set, if you're in quality manager, you're going to need to be very highly detailed. You're going to be probably not as a fast pace, and so they have benchmarks that they set up. And so what I would say is this: you do hire on skill set. At the same time in the interview, I believe in really, being open about, look, you may not want to work here because we do what we say here. And if that doesn't sound like you, we're not going to be a fit. And see how they respond. Ask them what their values are, what is important to them as a human being in their core of their beliefs, and really aligning in, getting the right people and the right seeds. So where companies, I believe, really lag in their growth is when they don't have the right person. This person may be incredible in their skill set, but they're killing your culture and really taking morale down in the company. That has a big impact on your bottom line. And again, it's a difficult conversation that needs to happen, not 2 months after it's, known that this person isn't the right fit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the personality profiles and stuff are good to an extent, but I think, kind of what you're mentioning though, they miss the value side. Um, because like we've noticed, no, I've noticed with in our company, the culture, like your culture is driven off the people you hire, right? And we've been really fortunate that we have amazing people who work for us. And the culture that has come out of that is that they're very team oriented. So it's very much like everybody's there to help each other out. And when I talk to various people, they say, "Oh, I love it about this company that anytime I have a problem or something, I can go put it in the chat, and everybody's willing to help me out to help solve it, and bend over backwards to help me get what I need." And I guess there's a level of one defining what you want your culture to be, but I wonder if it's still kind of hard to interview for that. And really get if people are how good of a fit they're going to be. What are your thoughts?
I believe having the right questions,
Mm-hmm.
again, seeking to understand, really listening to what it is that they're sharing, you can get a good pulse
Mm.
of where they are. And
Mm.
it's really taking the time. So it doesn't essentially have to be a one and done. You can do more than one interview.
Mm.
So hiring too fast, right, is a problem because we want to fill the seat. and
Mm.
just get someone in there. But really, is this person skilled? But more importantly, is are they the right fit?
Yeah, we had somebody on the show, and I can't remember all the details, but he was talking about how they do, they'll interview something like 1,000 people and hire, maybe 100 of them or something like that. And it was just crazy the number of people he would actually talk to before he landed on his best fit. And the interview cycle was really long, kind of like you're alluding to, like really making sure that he was getting people who were aligned to his organization. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I also find that not really when we talk about power of perspective is that people want to work with the people that are the same behavior styles as
Mm,
themselves. And I think also we forget that there's, very different styles. So someone that's a high D is likes to decide for everyone.
mm,
A low D decides not to decide.
mm.
So when you're on teams, when you're in opposite behavior styles, there's going to be conflict, or someone might be like, I'm not going to go to them. They don't know. They're not going to make a decision, or it becomes more of a judgment where if you really seek to understand each other's behavior styles, then you can come out with a much more stronger, more effective, better decisions and a more cohesive team by getting that understanding. And I've done conflict resolution in some of the companies that I work in, and I start with DISC.
Mm.
So that, and the other thing is values. So the DISC will also give you your motivational values, your drivers. So some people are high altruists, they just want to help everybody. Others are more high economic. So everything is, return on time and money. So when we're solving for what is the decision we're making, depending on what that person's values are, is going to also impact their decision of
Yeah.
what, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So it's really fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, I feel though like so diversity is obviously important when it comes to personality. But I do think that it can become really hard on teams if you are, I guess, polar opposites. Because there's no common ground to maybe work from. Like I feel like it's almost like a marriage in the sense that there has to be some overlap so that you can understand where they're coming from. I don't know. Have you seen that?
Well, I think first and foremost, everyone or a great deal of people married their opposite,
And that's
right?
how they end up in divorce. I mean, I divorced my first one, and the person I remarried is not my polar opposite. And that's part of where I'm coming from. Because I mean, that was exactly some of the challenges that we ran into. Is my current husband, he's more empathetic than I am. I'm more of the driver, but we both are high achievers.
Mhm.
And so there is a common understanding. So maybe he might be more people oriented and I'm more task oriented, but at least we're both goal oriented, so that yeah, I can be like, oh, I'm probably not being empathetic enough here or something, and I can learn from him. But it's not like where I felt before, where everything was a constant battle because we weren't even in the same universe.
Yeah, so I would say much like your husband is that in teams we want diversity,
Mm.
meaning you don't want a team of all D's,
No,
high
for sure not. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that one of you is more high empathy and the other is more task master, right? Is that the difference in perspective is now what is the best decision for you as a couple? What is the best decision for the greater good of the company? So aligning in, your values also need to help you make decisions
Right.
and use them as a filtering system. In addition to what is our mission, what is our 1 year goal, and what are our priorities for the quarter? And so, what is in the best interest of the company? And we want those different insights. And then, as a team, we make a decision, and then we have unity. So,
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking, and it's more like, let's say, outside of disc, because what I'm thinking is that there's some elements that you would definitely want the diversity on. But let's say you have a team that thrives in maybe a highly communicative, high, like butting heads, but in a positive way. I don't want to use that
okay,
negatively,
yeah,
right?
that's
Like
good.
they thrive on conflict, right? So if you introduce somebody into that team who is conflict adverse, the team is probably not going to be a high performing team. And so it's almost like you're saying, like, you've got to, maybe that becomes a value. We value healthy conflict. So we want not everybody to be exactly the same, but maybe the spectrum's this big, but we want them to be within this frame or something. Whereas introverted or extroverted, or empathetic or task oriented, we could take different, we want the variety there, but in conflict we only want people who can tolerate conflict. I don't know, just do you see where I'm coming at? Like certain things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what that reminds me of is the 5 dysfunctions. Patrick Lencioni is first, we have to have the foundation of trust. Trust is the foundation of everything. From there, we do want healthy conflict because everybody needs to have their, put it out on the table so that we can now make the best decision. So healthy conflict is the goal. Fear of conflict. So when we have dysfunctional culture, in that we don't want to say anything because we don't want Joe to react or what have you, that we're not operating at our best. We don't have a healthy culture. We do want healthy conflict so we can make the best decisions.
Right.
And so I agree with you. And it's not personal.
Right.
So I've been in sessions, leadership training sessions, where I have a team that's hypersensitive.
Yeah.
And I had them put a Q-tip in their pocket. And I said the Q-tip is an acronym, stands for quit taking it personal. It's not personal.
No, it's not. And I mean, obviously, some of us have different, tolerances there. It's funny, I guess, back to my husband. He often hears me arguing people and he'd be like, oh, you can't talk to them that way. Like, like, he gets so concerned about how they might feel. And I'll call that person back up and be like, hey, you're all right, right? Oh yeah, it's fine. We were just trying to get to the best idea. And, it's just, how he would take it. Like I can't have that same type of conversation with him at that level, like that intensity. That's what I should say, at that intensity, as sometimes I know I can with other people, because I know how they operate, from that like conflict and stuff. So it's also kind of what you're saying about really listening to people and knowing who you're talking to, so that you can even adjust your style, having an awareness of yourself and awareness of others, so that then you can have the best communication and reach the goals.
Yeah. And for me, it's fun because I recognize the behavior styles. So if I know someone's more logical in nature, I'm a high I. So I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into a 12-minute story about my surgery and my recovery, because a high logical, high detailed person just wants to talk about the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband's would definitely be an I. I don't know what like another, like his sub one would be, but I would definitely be a D and a C, I believe. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm very direct and very like fact oriented, and yeah.
And for training, so what I find powerful in teams is that if I'm going to come to you with an idea, knowing that you like detail and you're very fact based, I'm going to bring a lot of facts, even though that's not my natural tendency.
Mm, yeah.
So it makes for, I would say, more powerful outcomes
Mhm.
when you're making an effort to communicate in that person's style or just even aware of it.
Yeah.
But what I find is a lot of us have blinders on.
Mm, yeah.
And
Well, I mean, it's you gotta, it's not talked about a lot still. I mean, you have some companies who put value to it. I've been fortunate to work for a couple of companies that invested in that. But I'm not sure that everybody realizes the value of that investment. It's I enjoy it, and you get a lot of people who are like, oh, you can't bucket people. They aren't this or that. And it's true. Everybody's a
yeah,
spectrum, but what I've helped, like, I do Myers. I've done almost all of them, but like, so knowing that my husband's an ENFJ, it helps me be like, all right, I'm being too confrontational, or I'm being too this, and I can't go at it that way. Or, if somebody, is an S, where they're in the moment and they're not very futuristic, you can, change the way you're talking. Or I had one time actually where there was a lady I worked with, and the company used emergenetics. I love emergenetics, but and like we were always butted heads, and it couldn't ever get any ideas across to her. And I walked by her desk one day, and she had hers posted on the wall, and I saw that she was all structural and all analytical. And she was really low on flexibility. So she wasn't a big picture thinker, and she wasn't people oriented. And then, yeah, low flexibility. It was like, oh, you have to come with data and structure, data, like a process. And then hope she might be a little flexible and actually listen to it. And it was by walking by that, by her desk and seeing that there, that I was like, oh, I get it. I get why none of this is working. So yeah, there can be a lot of value in it for sure.
and also in the sales process,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, Robin, this has been a fun conversation. Would love to hear what you want to leave top of mind with our audience.
I would like to leave just, I would like to challenge everybody to look at themselves in the mirror and ask themselves, first and foremost, are they in alignment with their values? As an organization, I would encourage them also to get personal values in really aspiring to become their best self. And the other thing I would say is I do have a disc page on my website. If you're interested in talking to me about more about disc, you can go to my website. It's Robin, Robin, Osborn, Osborn.com. And I am gratefully here for, I got the second chance at life. I really am passionate at helping people and businesses become better. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity, Jana, to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you.
And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.